If you have any interest in freelancing, then this video is going to change your life. I have the privilege of talking with the two authors of the Complete Freelance Bundle and go over exactly how they were able to turn their side hobby of freelancing into a full-time job in just a single year. We also talk about how you can take pricing and instead of charging $100 an hour, you can charge tens of thousands of dollars to complete a project, which will then turn into recurring revenue of thousands of dollars every single month. These concepts that we talk about are absolutely amazing, and they blew my mind when I was talking with them. So if you at all are interested in freelancing, I highly recommend you watch this video all the way through to make sure you pick up every single piece of knowledge that they drop on you. Also, if you want to go even further and learn more about how you can do what they did and take freelancing as your full-time income, then make sure to check out their Complete Freelance Bundle. I'll have linked in the description, and use the code WDS and you're going to get an additional 20% off. Also, if you do purchase with that link, it's an affiliate link, so I'll get part of the money that you spend on the course, so it's a great way to help out the channel as well. So without any further ado, let's jump into that interview. And welcome everybody. I'm sitting here with Kyle and Johannes, and they are the authors of the Complete Freelance Bundle. And I just want to let them introduce themselves real quick before I start grilling them on all the freelancing questions I can think of. So Kyle, do you want to just introduce yourself first?
Sure. So first of all, thanks Kyle for having us. It's such a great honor to be on your awesome channel. So to answer your question, my name is Kyle Prinsloo, also a great first name as you can tell. And I'm a freelancer and also part of studywebdevelopment.com, and that's a website where we help other web developers ultimately become freelancers or earn a side income through freelancing.
Yes, and I'm Johannes Bauer, and I've joined Carl actually about just over a year ago, and it's been a fantastic partnership. We're actually great friends, and he asked me, "Hey, Johannes, don't you want to join me? Business is going better, it's booming, and I would really like you on board so that we can take it and scale it bigger." So I joined him, and it's been a great journey so far. It's fantastic to actually be able to do work with your friends. It's always a fun time. I mean, we're on the tennis court quite often, so I'm still yet to beat his ass, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, but we're partners in business and in friendship, but on the tennis court, enemies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious. I brought both of you on to talk about freelancing because I know a lot of people in my audience are really interested in freelancing and they just kind of want to know how to get started with freelancing. So I'm curious how you got started with freelancing. Again, I guess we'll start with Kyle here. I just kind of want to know like how you got started, maybe how you heard about it, what made you interested in it, and how you really ultimately got your start in freelancing.
Sure. So it's a good question. And it's actually a question or an answer that's different pretty much for everyone, right? My journey can be very different, but for me, I started in a marketing company and I enjoyed my job there. I was there for about 2 years before I thought, no, I was a bit irritated or frustrated because I wanted to do something more meaningful with my job and ultimately with my life and ultimately become my own boss, essentially. And that led me to sort of seeing what I could do. And eventually through my wife, she suggested that I study coding. And I studied on Udemy, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with that platform. Studied quite a few courses by Traversy, Cold Steel, Rob Percival, and reputable guys like that. And before I knew it, the combination of code and marketing actually synced quite well, because if we look at the complete package, I thought, okay, anyone can create a website, right? But what happens after you create the website for the client? Why not offer marketing services to them as a monthly marketing retainer so that you can get a once-off fee plus retainer marketing fees to help them get clients? So just from that perspective, I thought it went well together. And before I knew it, after about a year, I was actually matching my full-time income. And I know that doesn't happen with a lot of people, but in terms of how I started, how I got my first client, I'm going to say it, but block your ears, because it might be offensive to a lot of people. I got it through Fiverr. I got my first client through Fiverr. And I don't know if you want to delve into that in a bit more detail about how I did that and what unfolded thereafter. But we've got a great success story about that, because this client, I got him, I can't remember, maybe when was that? Maybe 2016, so about 4 or 5 years ago. And he's actually still with us today. And he's given us a lot of, his different businesses and through other clients that he's given to us. So that's been a great blessing from us. That's my starting point, at least. And obviously a lot has happened since then. So that was pretty much my foot into freelancing.
That's awesome. I think one really important thing that you touched on that not a lot of people do is that you said that you use the marketing portion to create a recurring revenue stream every month from your clients. So instead of having just to rely on finding new clients all the time to keep your revenue up, you have this longer form chain of recurring revenue that you're setting up with existing clients, which is really smart because it saves you a lot of time from having to search for new clients or vet new clients, which is hard to do and most freelancers don't really enjoy. So having that marketing side of things where you can say, hey, I'm going to do this extra work for you and you can continue to pay me monthly, that's really smart. And I think that's a great idea.
Exactly. And if I can sort of add some meat to what you said to maybe justify to those who are listening to actually do this, if we step back and we look at the alternatives, we can say, okay, fine, you can do a website for once off. Let's say it's a decent project, a big project for $5,000. Or you can get a $1,000 retainer a month. I don't know about you, but I would take $12,000 a year rather than once off $5,000. So if you get a lot of those retainer clients, it can add up very nicely. So I keep saying that the best source of income is passive income, but the second best source of income is retainer income, because if you do that well, you can scale it and you can often get, more importantly, you're getting results for your clients. You want to help them get results to grow their business. So you're sort of partnering with them and you're getting rewarded for their ultimate returns.
And something else that I notice a lot of freelancers, they run into this problem where they create a project for their client, they hand it off, but then the client just kind of expects them to be on retainer to help them with problems, but they're not actually paying a retainer fee. And a lot of beginner freelancers I find run into the trap of helping out these clients constantly over and over again for free, essentially, because a client runs into a bug a year later and is like, hey, I need this fixed. And they're like, oh crap, I need to fix this, when you don't actually have that retainer agreement. So setting up that retainer agreement is essentially a way to save yourself from having to do this kind of free work that you feel guilted into, because now they're essentially paying you a monthly fee to make sure you're there to fix the problems that do arise.
Exactly. And I think it's a lot of that is due to sort of the beginner mindset. You think, okay, I've helped the client in the past, I need to keep them happy. But what you're doing with that is, on one end you're keeping them happy, but for yourself that's not benefiting you in any way, because you need to value your time and you need to value that what you put in is ultimately benefiting your client. So there's nothing wrong with charging the client. I think that's just pretty much the spectrums that we're looking at in those examples.
Definitely, yeah. I don't know, do you have anything you wanted to add to this, Johannes, about how you got started, or anything about what we've talked about so far?
Yeah, sure. No, definitely. I actually started selling crepes on the street. I was literally door-to-door knocking on businesses. I would make the crepes. They call it pancakes here in South Africa. And I would go knock and sell them because that was what I needed to do at the time. This was many years back. This was more than 4 years back. And then from doing that, I actually met Carl. And we obviously, I didn't want to end up selling crepes on the street forever. That's just like, it's like Richard Branson starting to sell magazines when he was at school. It was my starting point. And then I met Carl, and for about 2 years, we were friends before anything else materialized. I then went into corporate. I had the privilege to go study at university, Stellenbosch University, and I actually got a degree in management accounting. And so from there, after about 2 years of also gaining some experience, Carl and I reconnected, and he said, well, let's take this thing to a next level. So I then joined Carl on this great journey of freelancing. It's been an absolute blessing. I really want to encourage everybody listening, go for it. There was a lot of fears that came up. There was a lot of doubts that came up. Carl and I were speaking over the phone for hours on end going, can we do this? Is this the right time? Should we wait maybe another year? You know, what. And so there were those things, but we took that leap of faith. We stepped out, and the rest is history. Now it's almost, like I say, with me on board with Carl, it's almost just over a year now, and we've seen tremendous growth. Just quickly, an example of the potential growth that you guys can also get once you start entering into the freelancing business, in the freelancing realm, is one of our clients. It was recently one of our biggest clients, actually. He actually wants us to buy shares into the company and own a part of it because of how good our marketing is. And so we've been negotiating with him now, and we've just finalized the agreement today. Literally just 10 minutes before this meeting, we got a WhatsApp coming through saying the share agreements are ready for you guys to go sign. So it's just the growth that happens when you put yourself in a position of freelancing and working for yourself. There's a lot more potential that you can reach, as opposed to working for somebody else, pushing hours. You're not going to be making these connections to actually start more businesses and buy shares into big businesses that you help grow and for which you can see the potential. So yeah, so it's really very, very beneficial and rewarding to pursue this route.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's congratulations, first of all, for that. That's amazing. And
Thanks.
I really like your point of like, don't wait to start, just start now, because there's no better time in life to start than now. I mean, the only time that's better is 10 minutes ago, but you don't have 10 minutes ago, so you just have to start now. I kind of view my YouTube channel as a great example of that. It's like, I was thinking about starting my channel for like 3 years before I finally did. And like, to think where I could be if I started 3 years ago versus where I started, 3 years after that, it's just mind-blowing, like how much further along I could be. So like, if you're thinking about freelancing, like, just get started right now, because really you have nothing to lose. Even if you mess up, which, I mean, you're guaranteed to mess up at some point. I messed up all the time on my channel. You guys messed up while freelancing. Even if you mess up, it doesn't really matter, because that's just a learning experience where you can go forward and become an even better freelancer just by taking those mistakes that you had and then building upon them and learning from those mistakes. So I think that's a great point, to just kind of get started immediately and don't wait around for the perfect moment, because there is no perfect moment.
Most definitely. And I also just want to add to that and say, be wise as to also not dropping everything else and then starting like a fresh cut. Have sort of a side job going for you. Have some income coming in so that you actually have money, and then start and up until it builds. Like Carl mentioned, he matched his salary within the first year. Fantastic. I mean, wow, that is awesome. And then he stepped back, because I think a lot of times, especially the younger us, we're very optimistic, and we go, man, I'm going to go out tomorrow. I'm going to start. I'm going to make like 100K, first month, here we go. Woo! And then nothing happens for a month and maybe two, you're like, and you just get knocked down. And then you think, oh, this isn't for me. I'm going to step back completely. And that's the worst thing to do. So start slowly, get your foot in the door, learn the skills you need to learn, start marketing your skills, start promoting yourself, getting some clients in. And as soon as you reach that break-even point with your salary and everything else, then drop it right there and just go full time. And then you'll see your growth escalate. I think it's really, really important. Don't fall in the trap as many other people have done, where they stop completely and then they stop after 2 months and say, this isn't for me. But it is for you. You perhaps just jump the gun a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
And Kyle, I guess I kind of want to go back to your story a little bit here. You mentioned that you got your first client from Fiverr, which honestly surprised me a little bit, because Fiverr is a place, kind of like Upwork, where people look at it and they're like, oh, this is only a place to get, like low tier, really cheap jobs. Like, why did you choose Fiverr? And like, maybe tell a little bit more of the story around that first client that you got.
Sure. So before I actually touch on the Fiverr side, I actually wanted to add on to what you guys mentioned, because it's perfect. It's 100% correct. It just reminds me of literally this week on Twitter. I mean, I was speaking to quite a few people about actually starting, because for some reason there's such a big mental block with people actually starting to freelance, because they think to themselves, okay, I need to know XYZ programming languages like a professional before I can actually start. But what's interesting is that you actually don't really need to know if I can say those air quotes, programming that well to start. I mean, if you just know WordPress alone, you can create exceptional websites that get your clients results, and you can start. If there's anything that you need custom work on or something that is not within your skill set, you just outsource it. That's literally that simple. So I just wanted to mention that from the starting point. Moving on to the Fiverr, onto the shocking part. So you are right. Fiverr has this sort of connotation for cheap, cheap work, not quality. And how can I say? In 2016, towards the beginning of 2016, what I did was to differentiate myself, because let's face it, when you go on a platform like that, you have to agree that that is the mindset of most people coming in to use Fiverr, right? So now, how can one differentiate themselves as a freelancer to stand out amongst the crowd to get decent clients? So what I did was, if you looked at the profiles, even now, this strategy still works today. What I did was, I paid $86. I still remember the exact amount because it was so much money back then. I really struggled to pay that amount. But I paid $86 for someone to create a video, almost like how would you call it? Almost like an infographic sort of video, like an animation of my services, to help me stand out from everyone next to me with these pictures. And now the question is, what type of service did I offer? The service I offered was a web design critique, an analysis of their website. So I would literally offer a service for $5. And my cut after that was $4, because Fiverr took 20%, or maybe a bit more than that. So, so literally for $4, and I would spend hours on doing an analysis report of like 5 pages. It didn't pay for itself. But what happened was this: I got the client for the $5 report. Then I sent it to them, and I over-delivered. My focus was on over-delivering. What I would do within that report is I would upsell them. I would say, okay, you've seen this report of my rough suggestions on what I recommend for your website, and to perhaps change some certain marketing suggestions. But if you would like me to do a visual, like a wireframe of the website, I will do it for $100. So eventually that client took that option, and then I did like a nice wireframe, again, over delivering, not profitable, but over delivering, again with the call to action right at the end. Now you've seen my theory, or my suggestions and strategy in the analysis report. Number 2, you've seen the visual design. The call to action for that one was, now for $1,000, I will implement this design. I will code it for you. So I don't know if that sort of makes sense so far, on what that strategy was.
No, this is genius. I absolutely love this. You took a platform that is mostly meant for, lower price jobs. Like, it's called Fiverr for a reason. Most of the jobs are around $5, $10, and nothing there is $1,000. I don't think you could find something for $1,000 on Fiverr. And you took that platform, and instead of using it for, trying to get quick profit from just getting really low margin $5 jobs here and there, you took it and said, I can find a bunch of clients that are willing to pay money, even if it's just $5, for something. And then you said, how can I get them to pay more money for something more valuable? And that is absolutely genius, because finding a client that'll pay you just a couple dollars is really important, because that client is more likely to pay you more money in the future. So, because they liked your work that you gave them, and then you upsold them to these higher things. So I absolutely love that approach. And I think that's something that really anyone can do, because it's not that hard to set up a simple, $5 Fiverr product and then be able to build upon it with your actual, skills of design or development or marketing or whatever it is that you're freelancing in.
Yeah, and I think it's a big mindset change, because we as freelancers, we always want to get that whale, like the $10,000 project, or like those big types of projects. But I mean, sort of step back from that and look that there's quantity if you get the lower ones, but it can still make sense. I mean, to put in perspective, this client back in 2016, so that was $1,000 for one website. In total, over the years, he's done 8 websites with us, And not only that, his marketing retainer started back then, I think it was about $200, and it went up over $1,000 per month. And that was, our fee, like our service fee. So that was our profit in that sense, which is very good, and not only that, he refers other clients and all the rest of it. But the point I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't easily cut off, the smaller projects, because if there's some strategy behind that, and if you get your client results, eventually it will grow.
Definitely, yeah. And even like $1,000, like it may seem like a smaller project when you compare it to something that's $10,000 or $20,000, but even a $1,000 project, you do a couple of those in a month, and that actually starts to become a pretty good recurring salary, especially if it's just like a side hobby for you. Like an extra $1,000 a month alone is pretty good for just a side hobby, and that's something that you can easily start to scale because now you've gotten your name out there. Like you mentioned that this client starts to refer you to other clients. I think that's one of the hardest things when you're first starting out is like, how do you get that word of mouth exposure? So finding some of these, supposed lower quality clients that are cheaper is really good because you can get your name out there and get some exposure through these cheaper clients, even though really $1,000 is quite a good chunk of change for your first client.
Yeah, and if I can say, I mean, I don't take that. I don't mean that lightly. I mean, $1,000, even in South African terms, is actually still a good amount. And back then it was really, I mean, I was really grateful for that. So yeah, I mean, I just want to highlight what you mentioned. I fully agree.
Nice. And kind of speaking upon that $1,000, like how did you determine how much that was a good value for you to charge for creating this either wireframe or for creating the actual website itself? Like how did you determine, okay, it's going to be $1,000? Because I know pricing for a lot of people is really hard to figure out, because how do you know how much you're worth? Like you may think you're worth some amount, but really you're worth more or less. So how did you figure that out?
So essentially what you're asking in simple terms is like, how do you know how much to charge for a website, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess
Okay.
it doesn't have to necessarily be like any website in general, but just like, how did you figure out your pricing? Because different websites are obviously different scales, so it's going to become a different price, but like, how do you determine that price?
Sure. So let me say that the pricing side, when it comes to freelancing, is crucial, because if you charge too low, you are essentially not going to make profit. Or let me put it this way: you don't want to just cover your salary. You want to at least make profit, right? Because who knows if I mean, you're sick for a month or something happens. You just need cash, to get yourself by. So you need a profitable business. Then, in saying that, the question is, how do you price a website? And look, back then I was still learning a lot of things. so our pricing strategy is a whole lot different now compared to back then. Back then I thought, sort of makes sense. Let me just put a number on it and go for it. But now what we do is we, for all clients, regardless of what type of industry we service and niche wherever you are in the world, we service, we charge based on value pricing. So what do I mean by that? And it's a very vague term. It's like, what does value mean, and so on. But essentially what we are trying to do is we are trying to offset the value of the potential return that the business can get with our improved website, with our improved marketing, based on the initial investment of the marketing, essentially for the project, for the website or the marketing retainer and so on. So if we go a step further, I know that might be a bit complicated for people, but if I go layman and sort of break that down, let's think of it like this. $1,000 website for a coffee shop. Does that sound sort of fair? Yes. $1,000 website for a multinational law firm in the US. Does that sound fair? No. It's that balance, because what that law firm is going to think is this person a sort of expert in what they're doing? They're going to question your expertise to deliver. But then on top of that, what you need to do is, let me use an example of a doctor, right? A doctor might earn, according to pay scale, let's say $200,000 to $300,000 on average per year. And let's say they're in a practice with other doctors. let's not even go on to how much the business makes. We're only looking at their salaries. As a general ballpark of what to charge for a website is roughly 10% of what they make. That's what they can actually spend in a year, plus minus, for marketing. So in the case of, let's use $300,000 as that example for one doctor, 10% of that is $30,000 for the whole year. That's plus minus $2,300, give or take, per month that they can spend. So you can essentially charge, between $2,000 to $3,000 quite comfortably. But let's say a nutritionist, on the other hand, might be around $50,000 to $60,000 a year. That's 5,000, a year. Divide that, that's what, $400 odd, which is not much. But then what we also need to keep in mind. So I don't know, are you with me so far in that sense?
No, definitely. This makes sense.
Okay, so now we take it a step further. Now we're looking at the value-based pricing, and Johannes can also add in here, as I'm going or when I'm done. But what we're trying to do now is we're trying to work out the potential return. And the example I always give is, let's say a 3D printing business. Like let's say a 3D printing business, they sell a 3D printer for $10,000, right? And they approach you and they say, Carl, we want you to do a website for us. How much are you going to charge us? Obviously, you're going to ask them a lot of questions and all of this. And one of the questions you're going to ask them is, number one, what is the average price of your 3D printer that you sell? And how many on average do you sell per month? And these are very important questions because in order to sort of help them with their business, you need to know where they are currently and where they could potentially be, because you want to be a vested partner in their success, right? You don't want to be a web designer just creating a website. You want to get them results. So you need to know this information. So let's say, for example, they are currently only selling one $10,000 3D printer per month. So that will be what? $120,000 a year, right? Now, let's say you go through their website and you see from two things, either from your own experience or from knowledge you've gained through case studies and looking at certain businesses in similar industries on how they can improve, especially for e-commerce. There's huge things, small changes you can do to get more sales. So let's say based on those two things, you see, wow, there's a lot of potential in this business. I'm quite confident I can increase their sales to get at least one more sale a month, right? So then what you would do is you would say, based on my calculations, based on my conservative projections, I'm confident that we can get an extra sale per printer per month. So what you do then is you don't say one per month. What you tell them is you tell them the annual amount. So you say, with our changes, I'm expecting conservatively that it'll result in an additional $120,000 for your business with these effective changes in place. Therefore, so what you're doing is you're price anchoring off of that. So 120,000, what you're doing is then you can say $8,000 for a website. I'm therefore going to charge you $8,000 or even $12,000 because it's 10% of that amount. So I don't know if that makes sense so far, based on the potential return and the potential value of the business, if that makes sense. So if you have follow-up questions and if Johannes wants to jump in.
Do you have anything, Johannes, or do you want me to go?
Yes, no, I can jump in on that. No, I think, Carl, that is exactly right what you mentioned there. So you're pretty much pricing it based on the value that you can generate them in the future. So almost like intrinsic value, if you take the cash flows that they can generate and you work it back to the present value, which is fantastic. I mean, so that is a fantastic way. But where I look at when running your freelancing business, you also need to find out what exactly is your operational costs. What exactly is your running costs? Because now some people might also say, no, but I'll just charge $500 for a website, but it might take them a month to do it. And then all of a sudden they're actually stealing from themselves because then they are valuing themselves as, okay, my time only cost $500, which is not true, just to get the sale.
Mm.
Because a lot of people, it's an emotional, mental thing where they go, I don't want to charge too much because I don't want to lose a sale because I want to get sales, but I don't want to charge too little because I want to have food on my table. So where is that middle ground? So where I come in with SWD and with our businesses, I actually look at the actual cost. What does it cost us exactly, down to the comma, to of our time, of our overheads, of everything, the designs I'm talking about, if it's marketing, Facebook post, cost per post, how much time will it take us? Now, I'm very much into detail. Kyle is more a big picture person. So that's what I do. And then I, based on that, actually see how much profit will we be making once we evaluate the business at the value-based pricing. So I hope you guys are still following. So this is very much, very, very detailed. So then I can be able to look at our figures and say we are making X profit. So if the client comes back and he wants to negotiate, because remember, he's also a businessman, he negotiates. He's not just going to accept your price. He's going to probably say, oh, I'll give you half of that, or no thanks, he's going to walk away. Where you can say, okay, let's negotiate. What are you willing? Where do we want to meet each other in the middle? So then you know how much you can play with to negotiate so that you can still cover your costs, cover your salary, cover all your overheads. Well, when I say all your overheads for the amount of work that you can bring to that client, because you've got many other clients that's also busy covering that overheads. And then you still have that chunk of profit that you will be making. So I hope that makes sense. But it's also a great starting point. I mean, if you are a junior doctor or you are a junior physician, you're not going to get the same value as a professor, a guy that has been in the field for 30 years because he's way more experienced. So you need to keep that in the back of your mind. If you've just started, if it's your first website and you're taking on a project for a law firm and it's a smaller law firm, you're not going to charge them $50,000. You might not even be able to do that project. It might just be too big out of your skill set. So you need to make sure that the project that you do take on, you can actually do those things that you cannot do. You can still outsource, so you can still do it, but you need to make sure that you can actually deliver. You don't want to say, oh, I can deliver, I can do this for you, can do that, and then false promises, and then you don't deliver. That's not ethical. So you must really make sure you can deliver it at this price and be humble. Start humble. I mean, I started selling pancakes. A pancake costs like 50, like a quarter, like flip, how much do I have to sell to make a living? So I'm just trying to say, like be humble in the beginning, grow your experience, grow all your skill sets, because at the same time, it's going to require you to be able to sell your skills and to also do all the other administrative stuff together with your actual skills of doing the work. So it's quite a bigger picture than just doing the developing. There's a lot more that goes into it. But yeah, I don't know if that helps, but that's my 2 cents on my quarter.
And if I can jump in here as well, Carl, because I mean, Johannes explained it great. I think, look, the whole pricing topic is actually a massive, massive topic to understand and to sort of get to grasp in. I mean, we've got quite a big article. If you just type in how to charge for a website, on Google, I think we rank #1 for that. That's quite a massive, massive article. I mean, go into that in a lot of detail. But let's also look at it from another angle. What affects pricing very much is the perception that you give. So if a client comes to you and you are perceived as being an expert in your industry, in your niche, that is already extra value, So you've already sort of won, how can I say, you've got a foot in the negotiation when it comes to your value-based pricing, because you don't have to charge what your 9-year-old niece next door charges for a website, because you've got expertise, you've got results, you've got experience that goes along with it. You can prove it. But also I just want to also tie up and just mention on a technical note that when one presents the pricing, this is quite fresh in my mind because I just finished an article on writing a proposal literally today. And it's important with that when you write web design proposals that you present your pricing in 3 options. You don't tell them, listen, here's my $5,000 website offer, take it or leave it. What you do is you're strategic in how you present your pricing to them. So in the case, for example, you might be, and remember it's 3 options. So option 1 is your lowest pricing, and it's sort of the package that you don't want him to take, right? So what you might do from this perspective is you might say, okay, fine. Option 1 is I would probably say maybe $4,000, right? Option 2 is $5,000. Option 3 is either $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000. So it's more on the extreme side. And what you're essentially doing is you're trying to help them psychologically say, option 1, it looks all right, but if I look at option 2, look at the middle one, I just pay $1,000 more, and they justify it from that perspective based on the price anchoring of option 1. Look at all the services and the additions I can get in option 2. Option 3 looks awesome, but it's just a little bit too expensive for now. Let me just do a low risk approach and go for option 2. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, this last like 10 minutes, you guys have just dropped tons and tons of knowledge bombs on me about pricing. It is absolutely absurd. I kind of want to summarize here to make sure that I kind of want to summarize this a little bit to make sure that I understand this and the audience understands this. So the main 2 things to look at when pricing, first of all, well, I guess 3. The main 3 things to look at is first, number 1, above all else, is look at your own expenses. It doesn't matter how great of a project this is. If you can't afford to do the project, if it's, not paying enough for your own expenses, just don't even bother with it. And then the other 2 things to look at are the value that you're bringing to the actual client and the amount of money the client has to actually spend. So if the client has a lot of money to spend, you can charge more because, someone that makes $1 million a year paying $10,000 is a lot different than someone making $50,000 a year paying $10,000. So to them, it's going to seem like less money. And also, I think what I feel is the most important of all of these is the value-based pricing. So instead of pricing yourself based on your time, let's say a project will take you 10 hours. You say, okay, 10 times $100 an hour, I'm going to charge $1,000. Say, okay, I'm bringing this company an extra $100,000 in revenue a year forever, essentially. So if the company lasts for 10 more years, that's $1 million you're generating them. So you can say, I can easily charge them $10,000 for this. They're going to be making $100,000 just this year and $200,000 next year. Like they're way profiting off of this. If someone gave me $10, or if I gave someone $10 and they gave me $100, I would just be throwing $10 bills at them all over the place. So that value-based pricing, I think, is really important because not only is it an easy way for you to charge more than what your time is, because time is kind of a hard thing to scale, value is much easier, but also it's a great way to sell the product to the actual client. Especially if you use that 3-tiered pricing that you mentioned, you can say, okay, I'm going to bring your business $100,000 in extra value by doing this middle option. And then let's say, the cheaper option, you're like, I'll bring you an additional $50,000 of revenue a year, but for only $1,000 more, you can get $100,000 of revenue a year based on how much better this design is, and how much better the actual product is. So like, that is a really easy way to sell them because they're like, oh, I'm getting double the value for only 20% more cost. This sounds like a great deal. And also they're like, I'm making an extra $100,000 a year. Like, who doesn't want that? So I think those are all really, really good points, especially, just like helping people with pricing, because so many people that do freelancing I see are just like, I charge $100 an hour no matter what. So like, it doesn't matter how much value you're bringing them. You could be bringing them an additional $1 million in value or an additional $100 in value, and you charge the same price. So I think scaling your price based on value is really important to help you make more money, because you don't have to take the low value clients. You can just take the more valuable clients where you're bringing them more value, and then you can essentially charge more per hour in essence.
Very true.
Exactly.
Very true.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to add one thing with that. When you also do these predictions as to the amount that they could be increasing in value and their revenue increasing, it's very, very important to be ethical and do that with integrity and to be realistic. It's one thing throwing out numbers, they're saying, yeah, I'll be able to make 100,000, like quickly. But if it's not true, then don't say it. Like you want to be honest, because one of the things that you must always stand for is honesty in business, because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. You want to be truthful, you want to be honest. Your clients must trust you, they must trust your company, and you must over deliver. So when you say you're going to do X, you must really over deliver and do it even better than what you've said you're going to do. So yeah, I just wanted to add that little nugget in there as well. Because that, funny enough, because they say it's the 80-20 rule. So now 20% of your clients whom you service and deliver and provide an amazing product, and you actually see great results, they're going to start telling their friends and their business partners and so forth about you, and you're going to be getting so much more work. So it's but it's because of that trust, and it's that's credibility and that integrity, which really goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that quick, Kyle, just two things in terms of the value-based pricing, or let me just tie up what Johanna said. In the proposal, that's why one must be very particular about the word that they use. So when they say, you shouldn't say things like, I can guarantee you X results, right? Because if you can't back that up, you're not telling the truth, and obviously, no one wants that. But what you should say is, I am confident if we do, A, we can get Y results. And also, that's based on, as I said, either the knowledge that you've learned, or more importantly, as you get more experience, it's even better to speak from experience. But I also just want to just tie up two other points on the value-based pricing, because Kyle, you touched on some interesting points here. I don't know if everyone knows about the Amazon $1 million button. I think it's either the $1 million button or the $1 billion button. But anyway, one guy at Amazon was highly underpaid. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Just a quick 13-second snippet of what happened. So this guy, the Amazon checkout page, instead of saying register, you fill out the form, you click register. You move on to the next page, right? But what he did was he just changed the words register, or the word register, to continue. Nothing else changed, and it resulted in an extra, I think it was $1 billion or 100 million or 300 million or something, but it was crazy, in additional sales from Amazon just based on that one word. So what the point of what I say is, small changes can result in massive results, and that guy got highly underpaid, if you ask me. Then moving on quickly onto the pricing side, because also this also goes hand in hand with charging by the hour, and we are very much against charging by the hour as a general rule. And the reason is just from a very simple perspective. Let's just look at it like this, right? Let's say you're a senior developer and you charge, let's say $100 an hour, versus a junior or mid-level developer, and they charge $50 an hour, right? Let's say, so there's Bob, the senior, there's Jane, the junior, right? Now we give the same task to them. Bob, the senior, the $100 an hour, he can do it in 1 hour, right? Jane, the junior, she can do it in 5 hours. So $100 versus $250 to get the same task done. What I'm trying to say is, charging by the hour discourages efficiency, and it's actually not good. If you think of it from that perspective, because if you are very good at what you do and you can solve the problem like that, why not just delay it, and so you can get paid more, And yes, it's got an honesty aspect to it, of course, but not only that. Let's say you're busy with a big project, right? Like, let's say a big e-commerce store, a big CMS website or something, and you know that, I charge $100 an hour. I can customize this or code this from scratch, and it's good, and I can charge the client quite easily. It's going to take 30 hours. That's $3,000. Boom, just like that. Versus, I know a plugin that I can buy for $50. It does exactly the same thing. I can save the client some cash, and it accomplishes the same task. It accomplishes the outcome that the client wants, right? So what I'm trying to say is that it discourages efficiency in the long term. Whereas if the client is paying for the outcome, the complete project, whether it takes you an extra week or whether it takes you more time, that's on you, because you can manage that finances properly, because they are not paying for your time per se, they are paying for the outcome of the project.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think the reason that a lot of people fall into the trap of doing hourly pay instead of project-based pay is because they don't know how to estimate the length of a project. Like, that's a really hard thing to do, even when you're experienced, like looking at a project and saying, oh yeah, that's going to take me 134 hours. It's like, you don't really know until you just kind of start building projects and figuring it out. So that's why I feel like a lot of people kind of fall into that trap of, hourly based pay, because they're like, well, at least if it takes longer than I think, I'm still going to get paid, for it, versus, if it takes me, the correct amount of time is the only way that you're going to make money off of the project-based way. But with the project-based way, I think it's much easier to justify higher payments. Because let's say you have a project that's going to take you 10 hours and you want to charge them $10,000 for it because of value-based pricing. Well, if you tell them, oh, I charge $1,000 an hour, most people are going to be like, that is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not going to pay you $1,000 an hour. But if you tell them, hey, I'm going to charge you $10,000 for the project because I think it's going to give you, an extra $100,000 in revenue, whatever it is, that's much easier to justify for the client. So that's another reason I think that going with project-based payment is better, not only because it's better for the client, because they don't have to overpay with you going slow on purpose. You don't have to worry about being too fast and getting paid less, but also it's just easier to justify a higher price point because paying by the hour, a lot of people are like, I don't see your time being worth that much, So they don't really see that connection when you're like, oh, if I give you this project, they're like, oh, the project is worth $10,000, but your time is not worth $1,000 an hour, even though they're equivalent.
Exactly.
So I guess here, before we wrap this up, I had one last question I wanted to ask both of you. If you don't have anything else that you wanted to say, I just want to make sure I'm not interrupting anything at all. Okay, so my last question I want to ask, the one last question I want to ask is, what is the biggest mistake that you made related to freelancing of some form, whether it's, pancake related or not, it doesn't matter. So just whatever your biggest mistake is, I want to know.
Johannes can go first. I'm sure he's burnt a lot of pancakes.
No, sure. Biggest mistake. I can, okay, off the top of my mind, quickly, okay, well, how can I say this? It's when I actually undervalued my services myself. I undervalued my product. And I put my heart and soul into it. And at the end of the day, you look at what you've done and you hand this beautiful ship that you've built, and it's sailing and it's cruising to this guy, and you hardly even feel the value, the worth that you've just given away now. It almost feels like you've stolen from yourself, or this client has stolen from you. And I think that's just in general, that is probably the biggest mistake I have made. And it's actually quite fitting that we are talking about value-based, because back then it wasn't very much value-based for me. It was more hourly-based. What can I do? And obviously I undervalued the amount of time it would take and so forth. And then I shot myself in the foot, figuratively speaking. So that is the biggest downer, biggest mistake, biggest lesson I've learned. And that is why we are so adamant in selling our value as opposed to selling our time. That's from me. Carl, what's your biggest mistake that you've made, buddy?
Well, listen, I mean, I make the perfect pancakes, just by the way. But look, non-pancake related, I think, look, there's a lot of things, and I think if one has to go into everything, I'm sure we could chat for hours, but just on the top of my head, a lot of finance related issues, like with the accountants, in hindsight, maybe to reduce, sort of go back to that, to sort of structure some things differently, or maybe not put so much trust in people, because I tend to sort of trust a lot of people and just be like, cool, no worries, you're doing it, you're handling it. I assume that people do things properly, not that one has to be checked up on that, in that sense. So I would say, that's more, not really a failure, but like at least a learning point. A lot of failures, if I can say, again, I don't like using the word failures because you learn from it, right? That's more education. I mean, I remember at the marketing place where I worked, because I was handling the AdWords, which was quite a big budget each month. And I sort of, I made a mistake, but a big mistake. It was many hundreds of thousands loss, put it that way, just for the small mistake. And I remember going to the meeting, to the interview, and said, "Oh, am I going to get fired now or something?" And they're like, "No, we just literally spent hundreds of thousands just training you up now, So I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that. Based on that marketing side, I had some knowledge where we could try get results for our clients and also get clients to us, right? So we're doing marketing on two sides: getting clients and also helping our clients grow their business. And there's been a lot of trial and error, spending a lot of money here and there just to see what works. But I think, and one should always want to try. One should always want to step out and try something new within reason. I mean, you don't want to go crazy and just spend everything, but take some risk, learn from it. I think that's just from my side, just the short of it, without going into a lot of detail.
Awesome. Yeah, no, those are great mistakes. Like mistakes, like you said, are just a way to learn, in my opinion, which is why I like to ask, what your biggest mistake is, because really asking your biggest mistake is asking what's the most important thing you learned. Because when you make a big mistake, you make sure you don't make it again, because you want to learn how to stop that. So those were awesome points. And I want to just thank you guys both so much for coming on. I myself have learned a ton, especially around pricing. And I'm sure that everyone watching this has also learned a ton. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with me.
Wow, thank you, Carl. Thank you for the opportunity. Very, very grateful. Thank you so much.
No, of course, anytime. If you were anything like me, then your mind was blowing listening to this amazing interview and finding out all of these great ways to start pricing in a more competitive way that'll give you more money and help out your client even more. So if you want to learn more about this whole freelancing process and how you can become a successful freelancer, make sure you check out the complete freelance bundle linked down in the description below and use the code WDS for an additional 20% off. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.